Hi, everybody. Happy Sunday evening, and welcome to Math After Hours with Miss Levan. This is a Topic 8 review video in preparation for your Topic 8 summative assessment that you'll be taking on Tuesday. Please give me some grace. It has been a minute since I've made a video back to e-learning, so I'm going to do my best. But this video will go through at least one problem of every skill that you'll see on your assessment, so please pay attention. Okay, as you know, on your summative tomorrow, you will be able to use a formula sheet, but it's actually really important that you know how to use the formula sheet. This should not look like anything new. We've been using these for weeks, but your most important formulas that you're going to use on there, if you have to find the area of a circle, you'll use this one. If you need to find the circumference of a circle, we are very familiar with this one, C equals 2 pi r. You also will need to know the cylinder formula, sphere, and cone. I think that most of you have Pythagorean theorem memorized by now, but if not, it's there too. Okay, so tips and tricks for success on this assessment. Number one, when you are solving any problem, start with asking yourself, what shape are we talking about here? Once you know the shape, you can look at your formula sheet and identify the formula that you need. Then my recommendation is to use the erase method, where you write out the whole formula in pencil and then you erase the variables and plug in the information given to you. And then once you get your answer, make sure that you watch your rounding to see what the problem is asking for, and make sure that you understand if you needed to use 3.14 or pi. All right, so let's get started. It'll start with kind of some easy basic skills. Okay, as you can see, Ms. Levan's still struggling a little bit. Okay, here we go with technology. The first thing that you need to make sure you know is the difference between radius and diameter. Remember that in a circle, your radius is halfway across your circle and your diameter is all the way across your circle. So if I was looking at this image of a cone, when it has this 18 going all the way across, I know that my diameter is 18. And oh my gosh, if I asked you what your radius is, if it's 18 all the way across, what's half of 18? And you would tell me that it's 9. Or let's say that I gave you a circle and you had a diameter of 20. If it's 20 all the way across, your radius would be 10. So that is like part 1 of your test. Okay, the next thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to find the area and the circumference of a circle. So remember, the moment that you're looking at the problem and it's asking you for the area of a circle, I know I'm going to be using this formula. So let's start with that. Let's use 3.14 for pi. So in your calculator, you do 3.14 times, it says radius squared. Well, I know that my radius is 21, so I'm going to do 21 squared. And then I'm actually going to do this live with you too. So 3.14 times 21 squared. And your calculator gives you 1,384.74. Let's hope that they just ask you to round to the nearest hundredth, because then you are done. But if they asked you to round to the nearest tenth, your answer would just be 1,384.7. Remember, your test is multiple choice, so it'll be pretty clear what your answer should be. You also need to be able to find the circumference of a circle, which is the space all the way around, kind of like the perimeter of a circle. So I start by writing out my formula. And then instead of pi, we're going to use, now I did used to have my eraser tool on this pen, but I don't know what happened to it. So we are going to use 3.14, and then you'll just plug in your radius. So you'll do 2 times 3.14 times 21. And you can practice putting that in your calculator. And your calculator gives you 131.88. Now, if you're rounding to the nearest hundredth, that's exactly what your calculator gives you, so you're done. But if you needed to round to the nearest tenth, it would be 131.9. That 8 would tell the other 8 to move up. But again, it's multiple choice, so you'll see what it's asking for. Okay, next skill is when you're given a three-dimensional shape and you need to find the volume. So step number 1, I know that the name of this shape is a sphere, so I am going to need the sphere formula here. So it starts off with 4/3, and remember we'll put that in parentheses in our calculator, times pi, let's use 3.14 for my sanity, times radius to the third power or radius cubed. Now, if you are looking at this figure, it already gives you the radius, so we are in good shape. So then the next thing you would do is you would put this in your calculator. So you do 4/3, oh boy, times 3.14 times 5 to the third power, giving you about 523.33. And again, just be careful with your rounding. See what the test is asking you for. Don't forget in your calculator, if you're doing 5 to the third power, it's 5 caret 3 or arrow. I know you guys always get on me for that. I call it caret, but call it arrow, whatever you want. Okay, so here's another figure. Now, this is a special cone. So the moment that you know it's a special cone, you get the lovely gift of doing some extra math work. So if I'm looking at my formula for a cone, I know I need a radius and a height. Well, my radius is 12, but I don't have my height. That tells you that before you can do anything with volume, you're going to have to solve for that height using Pythagorean theorem because this is a right triangle. So you've got A, you've got B, and you've got C. So if I'm going to solve for that, I've got A squared plus 12 squared equals 13 squared. Hopefully this is a lot of review. You can also put those values into your calculator to simplify them. Now, because you're solving for a leg and we want to isolate A, you're going to have to subtract over. So we're going to subtract 144 from both sides, giving you A squared equals 25. You cannot stop here. You cannot stop because A is not isolated yet. To undo something to the second power or the inverse, remember that you're going to do the square root on both sides. And when you take the square root of 25, you get that A equals 5. Now, that is nice for us because now we have our height. So now you can actually do the problem because you have everything that you need. Okay, so here is my cone volume formula. So V equals 1/3 times, let's use 3.14, times, it says R squared. When I'm looking at my cone, my radius is 12. So times 12 squared times my height, which you just found out was 5. I feel like we've done this cone 100 times. I'm so sorry. So in my calculator, I'm doing 1/3 times 3.14 times 12 squared times 5. And your calculator gives you a nice number. So it is time to jump up and down and be happy. So it gives you about 753.6. And remember, you would write your answer as inches to the third power or inches cubed. Now, let's say that they wanted you to round your answer to the nearest whole number or the nearest cubic inch. If they asked you to do so, that would be about 754 inches to the third power because the 6 would tell you to move up. Oh, I love that you can see my foam roller in the back of the video. That's great. Okay, last skill, which is probably the most challenging. The last skill that we talked about is when you are given the volume of a figure and you need to solve for other variables like a radius or like a height. You need to be really, really careful with this, okay? The best thing that you can do for yourself is to look at the shape, write out the formula, and erase variables and plug them back in. So the problem says a cylinder. Okay, right there. You stop yourself and you write out the formula for a cylinder. Pi r squared h. Okay, we got the formula. Has a volume of 400 cubic feet. All right, so if I know the volume is 400, I can erase V and I can plug in 400. Okay, got that. It says if the height of the cylinder is 25 feet, so I'm going to erase H and I'm going to put in 25. What is the radius of the cylinder? So we're solving for radius. Oh, and we get to use 3.14 for pi. And then at the end, we'll look at our rounding. So I'm going to erase this pi and I'm going to put in a 3.14. Oh, wow. Okay. So I wrote out my formula. I erased my variables and I plugged in the given information. And now it's kind of time to clean up and solve. So I know that I'm trying to get r squared by itself. But before I can do that, let's consolidate these two numbers into one single number. We call it the cleanup job. So you're doing 3.14 times 25. All right, so now we're at 400 equals. When I put that in my calculator, it gave me 78.5. But I still have this r squared. There are two more steps that you have to do to get r by itself or to isolate it. When in doubt, hopefully you said divide. That's the first thing you need to do. We're going to undo the multiplication of that 78.5, or we're undoing or doing the inverse. So we're going to divide on both sides. So in your calculator, you're going to do 400 divided by 78.5. And that's going to give you, and you're going to have to do some rounding, and that's okay, about 5.09, or let's just call it 5.1. Okay, please don't stop here, or I'm actually going to cry. You are not fully isolated with the r yet. To get r by itself, to undo squaring a number or something to the second power, you take the square root. And remember, in your calculator, that's second x squared. So second x squared 5.1. Now your calculator gives you about 2.258. The problem says to round to the nearest hundredth. So that means I have to look at the third decimal place to know what to do. The 8's going to tell the 5 to move up. So your final answer, I'm going to finish it up here, is going to be your radius is about 2.26 feet. And there you go. Okay, last one. If you are still with me this far, if you are in my class and you do not tell other people this because you're the one that's taking the time to study, if on your recording sheet, like on your workspace paper for your test, if you put a star with a 17 in the middle and you show it to me, there will be an extra prize for you. So on your recording sheet where you're like writing out your work and stuff, if you put a star with a 17 in the middle and you come show it to me, you will get an extra little prize. So don't tell your friends because you're the ones that took the time to study. Okay, erasing, go away. All right, last problem. So now you have another problem where you need to solve for something other than volume. It says, given that a sphere, okay, stop right there. We're talking about a sphere. There is your sphere formula. So you have V equals 4/3 times 3.14 times r to the third. I know that the formula says pi, but I already saw in the problem it says to use 3.14, so I just plugged it right in. It says that it has a volume of 100. So I'm going to erase V, and I'm going to plug in 100. And we're trying to find the radius. And at the end, we're going to round to the nearest 10th, which we haven't done yet. So we're trying to get r isolated and by itself to solve for it. Okay, so now it's time for the cleanup job. We need to combine these two numbers with multiplication into one singular number. Now, I bet you remember after doing this 100 times in class, when you do 4/3 times 3.14, it gives you 4.19. I don't even need to calculate that because we've done it so many times. Okay. So now we have a few more steps here. We're still trying to get r by itself. The next step, if you're ever not sure, when in doubt, divide. Divide both sides, which breaks away that 4.19 from the number. So in your calculator, you're going to do 100 divided by 4.19. And it gives us about 23.87 equals r to the third. Okay, now this is very different. To isolate r, to get it all by itself, we need to undo something to the third power or undo cubing. This is the only problems in which you are going to perform a cube root, that very special mathematics operation. I'm sure Scott's upstairs laughing that I'm like, oh, it's so special. It's a cube root. Well, I think it's special. On your calculator to do the cube root, you're going to do 3 second caret or arrow 23.87. So I'm going to put in 23.87, and your calculator gives you about 2.879. Now, the problem asks you to round to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to look at this second digit to see what I need to do. 7 is going to tell the 8 to move up one. So my final answer is going to be R is about 2.9. Let's see the inches. 2.9 inches. Okay. The only other thing that I didn't explicitly talk about in here, if you were asked to find the volume of a cylinder, for example, here's your cylinder formula, and you were asked to leave your answer in terms of pi. Let's say that my radius was 2 and my height was 3. If you're asked to leave your answer in terms of pi, you're still going to go through the same process where you're going to plug in the different measurements given to you. So instead of r squared, it'll be 2 squared. And then instead of height, it'll be 3. But when you leave it in terms of pi, remember, you're just going to multiply these numbers together. So I know 2 squared is 2 times 2, which is 4, times 3 is 12. And then you just put the pi at the end. So that's the last thing. Other than that, I hope that helped you study. It's a perfect review for you. If you have any questions, please message me on Schoology. Make sure your pink study guide is done. Check with my answer key, and you got this. And I'm very proud of you. Okay, happy studying.